begin just a little bit. Chapter 4, verse 16, he said, Am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? How often do we feel like the enemy whenever we have to tell the truth of the gospel? Well, quite often. It shouldn't feel like that, but it does sometimes, especially when one is not living according to the word. When someone is doing things that they shouldn't do, consuming things that they shouldn't consume, we feel like we become the enemy because we have to tell them, hey, you're not doing what you should. Paul spoke of very harsh things in his life. We looked at, last week, we looked at Romans chapter 1, where he goes down and he breaks through every little thing that the Roman Christians were doing wrong. I don't think we hit the last couple of verses, so let's go ahead and go to Romans chapter 1 real quick, and we will hit those. Romans chapter 1, we're looking at verses 28 through the end. It says, And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, or that is an unqualified or unacceptable mind, to do those things which are not convenient or unseemly. He says, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliceness, envy, or full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful. Knowing the judgment of God, they commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. That's a long list of things that Paul is saying, you're doing wrong. And he does not hold back when he addresses these things. He also addressed, as I remember mentioning last time, the man who had his father's wife in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. He doesn't mince words with sin, and we should not either. Really, if we hold back in teaching the truth, are we showing those whom we are teaching love, or really those whom we are not teaching? Are we showing them love? Are we looking out for their souls? No, we're not. We're allowing them to stay in that situation, and it's difficult. It's difficult.
Now, to that point, by not saying anything, we may be limiting the tacit approval.
That's exactly right.
The actions.
And that's what Paul was saying right here. He's like, you're allowing them to do that. You're basically giving them your stamp of approval. And that's exactly right. But Paul, he's not mincing words about this. He shuts down false teaching. In Galatians chapter 2 and verse 5, not for an hour. He does not let that sort of thing go on. He will shut it down when it needs to be shut down. Was Paul seeking to please men? Well, with the verses that we've read from Paul, from Paul's pen, of course, no. He wasn't seeking to please men, or he wouldn't have wrote so many of the harsh things that he had wrote, or things that we perceive as harsh, when all it is the truth. But the rebuking that happens, it's to steer us in the right direction. We have a verse Psalm 141 and verse 5, telling us how rebuking steers us in the right direction. We shouldn't let a friendship get in the way of saying what needs to be said. Sure, we're friends with this person, but we really need to, or the whole thought process should be, we're here to save souls. We're here to watch out for those who are around us. We're here to baptize and to make disciples.
The problem we have in our society today is when you try to speak the truth, they turn around and they call it hate speech.
Yep.
So society has turned our love for the truth, into what they say is hate speech.
That's exactly right. You see these, if you're on any type of social media, you'll see these videos where people, whether they are gospel preachers or not, or they are sound gospel preachers or not, on the side of the street trying to preach the truth, or a form of, I don't want to say a form of the truth. They're speaking about the Bible and they are instantly shut down. They are screamed at, and if they could, they would probably get their hands laid on them. That they'd be taken away to prison if other people had their way.
Many places they're arrested.
Yep, I was getting there. I think Canada was one of the places that if you preached against homosexuality, they will arrest you. They will take you to jail for that. So,
if you're standing in prayer, silent prayer, in front of an abortion clinic in the U.S., you will be arrested.
yeah, it's extremely sad how far that we have went in the wrong direction. So, so talking about the friendship, what about the parent relationship, the parent to children relationship? Still on the thought of one rebuking another. If children disobey, what do you do? What do you do? Discipline.
We used to punish, but that's almost...
That's exactly right. We used to punish, but that's almost completely gone now. What does the Bible tell us about our, I guess, relationship between the parents and the children if they don't punish their children? You hate them. Well, let's go look at a couple verses about rebuking. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 24. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 24. And whoever gets there first can go ahead and read that.
He who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly.
All right. He who spares the rod hates his son. If we spare our children from punishment, what are we doing? We're not teaching them anything. And really, as the verse says, we're showing that we hate them. Verse 22, or chapter 22, in verse 15. Chapter 22 in verse 15.
Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives him far from him.
That's what the rod of discipline is for. To get rid of the foolishness and to teach. That's what it's for. It's not because we hate our children. I say our children. I don't have any children yet. It's not because you hate your children. It's because you want them to learn. It's because you love them and want to guide them in the right direction. Okay, chapter 23 and verse 13. Chapter 23 and verse 13.
Withhold not correction from a child, for if thou
They're not going to die if we discipline them. They're not going to die if we discipline them. They may not like us. Once again, I say us. They may not like you. But it's not going to be the end of the world. Now, are we saying beat your children? Absolutely not. Discipline them. There's a big difference between the two.
You know, that next verse is very extraordinary when you read 14.
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt beat him with a rod and shalt deliver his soul from hell.
That's exactly right. It helps to teach them the way that they should go. That's extremely important. Oh yeah, that was also in my list. It was just down. Whoops. Thank you for pointing that out. No, don't apologize. You pointed that out, and I was in my own world, I guess. Chapter 10 and verse 13. Chapter 10 and verse 13. In the lips of him that hath understanding wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. The punishment is for those who are foolish. It's those who need correction. In chapter 26 and verse 3. 26 and verse 3. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the donkey, and a rod for the fool's back. It just reminding us of the different things that are used for correction, and is specifically for what we're looking at here, the rod for the fool's back. That's all we're going for, discipline. The rod that is mentioned in all these verses are used for correction. Not injuring or maiming one, but to teach. In Psalm 23, where we have the verse that says, "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me," the rod is for correction, for direction, to guide them in the right direction. The staff, that's for the protection, watching over them. It's extremely important that we rebuke those who need it. Do we immediately become adversarial when someone points out our shortcomings? Well, if we do, we need to make a change. Do we apply the lessons to other people when we should apply it to ourselves? Because we ourselves are not perfect, and we all have problems. We've all got our own problems. What we really like to do is point out the shortcomings of others. Well, you remember what this person did? Doesn't matter what they did. They know what they did. We need to keep our eyes on ourselves first. Verse 17. Verse 17. We made it to verse 17.
Tell them before we leave that.
We didn't make it to verse 17.
Oftentimes it seems like it's not what's said, but how it's said.
Yes.
And sometimes, particularly with children, when they will think about a grandfather's approach more than a father's approach to some situations. And whether it's co-workers or just trying to present the gospel, and this is oftentimes with people who are very self-righteous, they tend to take a shotgun approach in their teachings or in their correction or in their reduction of correction, where if they took a more humble approach, they might not feel this hate and resentment, and people might not become an enemy. Oftentimes we try to separate what we were doing professional world from what we do at the church. And most of the time, it needs to be the same type of approach.
Right.
We can't be shy of presenting the scriptures. We need to be very shy presenting what we think the scriptures say.
Right.
And that's usually what creates the problem with somebody, is their opinion and our opinion. But if we just present the scriptures in a humble manner, it should not create an adversarial world.
Right. You just present what it says. That's all we can do. That's exactly right.
There's no doubt what Brad said is right in today's society. No matter how humble you present it, there's some things that are going to upset people.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of it we can't really do anything about.
Right. It's always, well, my truth is, or this is what I understand. What's it say? I mean, we can't get around that. And so jumping into verse 17, where it says, they zealously affect you, but not well. Yea, they would exclude you, that ye might affect them. So we're jumping back to the fact, when we're saying they, we're talking about who? To whom, or whom are we talking about? Who? Sorry. Who are we talking about? The they that's being mentioned here. Who's been the problem people? The Judaizers. The ones who are trying to pull them, or the Galatians, away from the gospel, away from Christ. So they are zealously affecting them. What their attitude is, it's either us or them. If we're going to be against them, then they're going to exclude you. The thought is that their club is an exclusive club. If you're not with us, then you're our enemy, and we'll have nothing to do with you. The Judaizers, they don't want the Galatians to seek Christ. They want the Galatians to seek them. That's because, we have the old law and the new law. The old law is done away. It's no longer in effect. We have the new law now, the new covenant that's been made. Well, we no longer are seeking after the old law. But that's what the Jews want them to do. So in seeking, I feel like I'm making it more confusing. Basically, the Judaizers, they want the Galatians to seek after them. It's not necessarily you have to, this is how you have to live. It's, you have to go through us. They want to be sought by others and shut out everyone that is not on their team, per se. The criteria to join, circumcision, that's their criteria to join. And if you don't do that, then you aren't allowed to be in their quote-unquote club. Now, Paul says it is good to be zealously affected always in a good thing. It's good to be zealously affected in a good thing. What's a good thing that Paul might be mentioning here? Because in the latter part of the verse he says, and not only when I'm present with you. What's the good thing?
Spreading the gospel.
Spreading the gospel. The gospel, the good news. It's always great to be zealously affected with that. But not just when Paul is there. The same thought could be applied to when we're out in the world, when we're not at services, when we're doing our weekly tasks, our weekly life, do we change our attitude once another Christian walks in the room? We shouldn't. It should just be, hey, it's another day. We make the decision every single day, every single moment to live for Christ. That's what we should be doing. But when we go through this life and we have someone who's a Christian that walks in and you have to change your attitude or change the way that you're talking or the way that you're conducting yourself, there's a problem. There is a big problem. And that's what Paul is addressing here. It shouldn't just be when I'm around. It should not be at that point. It should be constantly. He says, my little children, whom I travail in birth against until Christ be formed in you. This one was a little interesting. One, I have no experience in the birth that is, or the type of birth that Paul is alluding to. Because I feel like he is alluding to a physical birth. Both a physical and a spiritual birth, in a sense. Because he's saying that what he's comparing the actions of the Galatians and everything that's going on, he's comparing the regression of a child going back into the mother's womb to give birth to them again. He has taught them the gospel once. He's shown them what they need to do. They've made that choice. That they made the choice to follow Christ. But as in the first chapter, they had gone away from that. They had gone away, and they needed to be retaught and refocused to living for Christ. They're going to, or they have to go back. They have to restart. That's the whole thought that's going on here. Do you think Paul would be a little frustrated with them? A little bit. I mean, with the way that he's comparing it to a physical birth, travailing in birth again until Christ be formed in you. Ask all the mothers. Do you want your child to go back into, just deal with this for a second, go back into you to be born again? Not really. It'd be a little annoying or a little frustrating, wouldn't it? I mean, yes, a birth is an amazing thing. But do you want to go through it more than once for the same person? I mean, if that sort of makes sense. It doesn't entirely make sense with how things actually go, but you wouldn't really want to.
He's referring here that these people were taught and they obeyed the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And they are reverting back to the ways of the world. And he's expressing his own feelings that is the most painful thing you can do to me.
That's
You're hurting me.
Right.
And I'm trying to prevent that.
That's
Because he said it right in verse 19, my little children, they are hurting him in a way that only a family member could.
Mm-hmm. The deep type of affection is being shown.
But he is trying to correct them and get them back where they should be.
Right.
At all times, not put on the show and be righteous when he's there.
Right.
But to do that every day.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The pain that he's going through, that's why the comparison is here. He's got a deep affection for them, and he wants them to be saved. He wants them to be following the truth, but they aren't doing it. So that's why this has to be written. He says, I desire to be present with you now to change my voice, for I stand in doubt of you. Change my voice. The Greek word that's used there, the word for voice, it could also be used as tone. He wants to change his tone. He doesn't want to speak to them in this fashion. He wishes he didn't have to. He wishes that he could be present with them now so that he could change all of that. He says, tell me, ye desire to be under the law, but do ye not hear the law? Now we're going to... We don't have time to get through the next section that I want to get through. Go ahead.
To your point there, let's not forget, Paul chastised Peter for the exact same thing. An established apostle, also teaching the Greeks, or the Gentiles.
Yep.
And yet when others came from Jerusalem, Peter slipped back into some of the old ways.
That's exactly
And
right.
Paul addressed that to a fellow apostle. Hey, you're falling back, you're slipping. Are you walking the walk, basically?
Right. That's exactly right. No one is exempt from sin. No one's exempt from being tempted to fall into those fallacies. We all fail. So what I want to do now is we're going to read this next section of verses, and we're going to see what we can get through. So let's start in verse 21 and go to the end of the chapter. If someone would like to read that, that would be fantastic. Starting.
Those who desire to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? It is written that Abraham had two sons, one by the slave woman and one by the free woman. The one by the slave woman was born according to the flesh, and the one by the free woman was born of promise. These are an allegory. These women are two covenants. One from Mount Sinai bearing children into slavery, which is Hagar. This Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and she corresponds to the Jerusalem, which now is, for she is enslaved with the children. But the Jerusalem which is above is free, which is our mother, for it is written, be glad, barren one who is not barren, break forth and cry, the one not having birth pangs, for the children of the desolate are many more than of the one who has a husband. You, brothers, as Isaac, are children of promise, but as the one who was born according to the flesh persecuted the one born according to the Spirit, so it is now. Nevertheless, what does the Scripture say? Cast out the slave woman and her son, for the son of the slave woman will not inherit with the son of the free woman. Therefore, brothers, we are not children of the slave woman, but of the free woman.
Okay, so who is the free woman? Sarah. We know that because the bondwoman is Hagar, as it's written in the King James, that they drop some of the letters in some of the Old Testament names that are mentioned in the New Testament, but that is Hagar. Let's see. Abraham had two sons. Who were they? Isaac and Ishmael. One was the son of the bondwoman. Which one was that? Ishmael. And the son of the free woman would be Isaac. Let's jump over, since we are short on time, let's jump over to Genesis. And we're going to go to, since we practically just covered, no, we can do that. Let's read through Genesis chapter 16, and then we're going to jump over to chapter 21. We're going to have the two accounts of the births and everything that goes along with that. So, bear with me really quickly. We're going to try to get through this as fast as we can. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go into to my maid, that it may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened unto the voice of Sarai, and Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her handmaid, or her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee, I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord's judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand, do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by the fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain of the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence comest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, and it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord that spake to her, Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well that was called Bir Lahai Roi, behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which the Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. Now, we don't have time to get through chapter 21, but we will do that next time whenever we come back to study. So thank you for your attention.